Good morning and welcome to TVP World News. I'm your host, Diana Skaya, and these are this morning's headlines. Thousands of Serbians took to the streets on Monday to protest government corruption, staying out well into the night. Now, blocking the main road leading to a highway in the Serbian capital, the protesters demanded accountability for a deadly rail station roof collapse in November last year that killed 15 people. Now, demonstrators blew whistles and lit up the air with their mobile phones in a blockade intended to continue for 24 hours. Demonstrators believe corruption, nepotism, and poor quality construction work were behind the disaster and demand swift judicial action against those found responsible for the roof collapse of the Novi Sad train station. The government continues to deny any blame. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić spoke out on protesting students. He also announced a reshuffle of his cabinet, which is supposed to replace some 50% of the current minister roster.
The question is whether all this will be enough for someone to say, all the demands have been met. The students were very fair. They stuck to these 4 demands and didn't add on like some others. I hope that it will be enough, but I am not sure about that. But I am sure that this must initiate a dialogue in society. That rectors, deans, and everyone else must begin with talks. It's very important that we open a dialogue. It will mean that our society can now begin to heal. I require the most urgent and sweeping reshuffle of the Serbian government, because in these difficult political times, it has become clear who is ready to fight and who is not. Who is ready to work and who is not, who has gone to ground and who has not. As a result, I expect more than 50% of current ministers to be replaced in a very urgent reshuffle.
A Russian drone attack has sparked a large fire in Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv. Now, a gas pipe was damaged in the strike, which targeted an industrial area. Now, the Ukrainian authorities say the blaze spread to an area of about 1,500 square meters. 12 units of the Ukrainian State Emergency Service were reportedly involved in extinguishing the flames. Now, local authorities say the attacked facility was a woodworking shop and no one was inside during the strike. European Affairs ministers will gather today in Brussels for the General Affairs Council. Now, this will be the first meeting of the body since Poland took over the presidency of the EU Council. Now, when Poland assumed the presidency for the second time since it joined the European Union 20 years ago, security in a variety of aspects was chosen as the main focus of Warsaw's 6 months at the helm of the EU Council. Now, the priorities of the Polish presidency, including protection of the European borders, resilience against foreign interference, as well as energy security and transformation, are expected to be outlined during today's session. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, is going to meet his Polish counterpart, Donald Tusk, in Warsaw on Tuesday. Now, the leaders will discuss support for Ukraine and strengthening NATO's eastern flank. Now, the talks are also to focus on the cooperation between Ottawa and Brussels. Poland currently holds the rotating presidency in the Council of the European Union, and the EU is Canada's second largest economic partner. Now, during his visit to Poland, Prime Minister Trudeau has attended the commemorations of the liberation of the German concentration and death camp in Auschwitz. Commemorations were held on Monday to mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Around 50 Holocaust survivors were in attendance, and some of them shared their testimonies of the horrors they experienced at the concentration and extermination camp. Our Aaron Damon was at the ceremony and has this next report.
A somber day here at Auschwitz, 80 years since this concentration camp was liberated. You can see the very recognisable barbed wire fence behind me that has become synonymous, a symbol of this brutal genocide during World War II. And just a couple of metres away from where we're standing, a tent was set up around the main gate, the main entrance of Auschwitz-Birkenau II. And it was in front of that gate that survivors today told their story. Here is what they had to say.
Którzy doczekali Those who lived to see freedom, there were hardly any of them, and now there are only a handful of survivors. We need to think of all those victims who can never share their experience.
So true.
January 27th. My whole life, since I was a little girl, I thought of it as my birthday. This is my birthday. Some of my friends don't even know that I have a regular birthday, because this is what counts.
Leaders from all around the world came here for these commemorations, including King Charles and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In fact, when President Zelensky got up with the other dignitaries to light a candle in tribute to the victims of Auschwitz, he got a standing ovation. And it is worth remembering here that 1.1 million people were killed at Auschwitz during World War II. That number is staggering. But when you hear the survivors speaking about their memories, about their stories, it becomes all too real. And now delegations are leaving behind me, driving off back into the night, and they'll have those stories, those memories ringing in their ear. From Auschwitz for TVP World, I'm Aaron Darman.
The owner of freighter at the center of a sabotage investigation into a Baltic Sea data cable damaged on Sunday says his ship may have been responsible. Now, the latest breach of a link between Latvia and Sweden comes a month after similar damage to other cables prompted NATO to set up patrols. Analysts warn, though, that there appears to be a concerted campaign to test the alliance's domination in the Baltic Sea. John Todd reports.
A swift response from Sweden's Coast Guard saw officers seize, then board the Vezin within hours of the latest Baltic Sea cable breach. Reports suggest the Bulgarian-owned ship set off from the Russian port of Ust-Luga several days ago. Authorities suspect Moscow's hand in the damage as part of the Kremlin's hybrid war with the West.
The security service has opened a preliminary investigation. The National Security Unit is handling it. We know that there is a Russian sabotage threat against Sweden, but also other countries.
The fibre-optic link between Gotland and Ventspils in Latvia was damaged in Sweden's exclusive economic zone early on Sunday. It comes after Estonia and Finland suffered damage to an undersea power cable and 4 telecoms lines in late December. That incident prompted NATO to beef up patrols, launching a new mission dubbed Baltic Sentry to protect critical infrastructure. Analysts and politicians say the increasing incidence of seabed damage makes the action appear deliberate.
Right now, we are experiencing it again. More damaged cables. This can't be a coincidence. GPS signals are repeatedly disrupted. Critical infrastructure is spied on with drones.
Well, this is a recurring pattern, and it's hard to believe in coincidences in this part of the world and the maritime domain anymore, because it's been happening so often. It is very, very clear that this was done on purpose.
Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk earlier this month emphasized the importance of increasing security in the Baltic.
Countries lying along the Baltic Sea need a permanent and efficient control of security at the Baltic Sea.
The ship's owner, meanwhile, is adamant that any damage was not deliberate.
There is absolutely no way that we're talking about an act of sabotage or whatever other action on behalf of our crew.
As NATO vessels leave Copenhagen as part of the Sentry security patrols, Sweden's sabotage investigation continues. Experts say Russia is testing the alliance to see how it can potentially achieve dominance in the Baltic Sea.
Danish authorities announced on Monday the country would spend over $2 billion on boosting its military presence in the Arctic. Now, the decision comes amid continuing outcry over U.S. President Donald Trump's interest in controlling Greenland, a semi-autonomous Danish territory. Now, in a written statement, the Danish Ministry of Defense said that Danish political parties agreed to, quote, improve capabilities for surveillance and maintaining sovereignty in the region. As part of the multi-billion-dollar investment, Denmark will fund new Arctic naval vessels long-range drones, and ramp up recruitment for basic Arctic military training. Moreover, lawmakers from all Danish political parties agreed to discuss further increases to the Arctic military budget later this year. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen traveled to Paris on Tuesday to meet with French President Emmanuel Macron. Frederiksen visits the French capital just weeks after Donald Trump reiterated the U.S. bid for acquiring Greenland. Now, Denmark is a small country with strong alliances, said Frederiksen ahead of her meeting with Macron. Apart from visiting Paris, the Danish Prime Minister will also head to Berlin and Brussels to meet with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and NATO Chief Mark Rutte. The overarching theme of these meetings is European unity, but the U.S. attempting to acquire Greenland, a Danish-dependent territory, is said to be high on the agenda.
Going to meet a point where it's too much, maybe. It's a long way to go before that happens here in Greenland.
On Monday, French authorities declared a red weather alert for western parts of the country. Storm Herminia unleashed large downpours in the administrative center of Rennes, with the area experiencing the worst flooding in 40 years. Now, 8 other French departments were on an orange alert for flooding, flash floods, and in case of the French Alps, avalanches. According to the mayor of Rennes, the worst floods are still to come, and water levels are expected to start receding only on Wednesday. The city evacuated 400 residents living in the streets near the Saint-Martin Canal and turned gyms into temporary shelters. Donald Trump has announced he will sign executive orders banning transgender persons from the American military. And moreover, Trump said he'll also stop service members from, quote, being indoctrinated with radical left ideologies such as the critical race theory.
And next, to ensure that we have the most lethal fighting force in the world, we will get transgender ideology the hell out of our military. It's going to be gone. In addition, we will stop our service members from being indoctrinated with radical left ideologies such as critical race theory. We're going to stop it. It's already been stopped. It's already been halted, totally halted. And finally, we will offer full reinstatement to any service member who was expelled from the armed forces due to the COVID vaccine mandate. And we will restore them to their former rank with full pay.
The United States will step up its efforts to build an advanced anti-ballistic missile system. Now, the orders to create the Iron Dome for America were officially issued by Donald Trump on Monday. Washington first began to develop an advanced anti-nuclear missile system during the presidency of Ronald Reagan. However, no comprehensive installation was eventually built at the time. Since then, the threat of next-generation intercontinental missiles has only grown. The new Iron Dome for America is expected to protect the U.S. from the attacks by ballistic, hypersonic, and cruise missiles and will include elements of space architecture. At a Republican event in Miami, Donald Trump said that the introduction of China's new artificial intelligence solutions should be a wake-up call for the American tech industry. At the same time, Trump views the development as a positive, apparently thinking that Chinese companies will gladly share intellectual property like patents with their American counterparts.
China and some of the companies in China, one in particular, coming up with a faster method of AI and much less expensive method. And that's good because you don't have to spend as much money. I view that as a positive, as an asset. So I really think if it's fact and if it's true, and nobody really knows if it is, but I view that as a positive because you'll be doing that too. So you won't be spending as much and you'll get the same result, hopefully. The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser focused on competing to win because we have the greatest scientists in the world.
And that's all for this edition of TVP World News. I'm Diana Skaya. Up next, interviews with Ashim Kumar. Stay tuned.